feel like I should maybe like lie down here.
Yeah, I think you should.
Stretch
Hi
out.
everyone, good afternoon, or well, it's nearly lunchtime. My name's Emma and I'm the president of Whalar, I'm just going to say that correctly. Joined on stage by our lovely partner and client Andre, and we're going to really dive into the new world of creators and how they can really, really elevate brands. We're doing some incredible work with Skyscanner, so before we jump into this, let's just kick off with a short video.
You better be ready to book a flight at any given moment.
Team balling on a budget for life, baby.
Places to see in Europe that you probably haven't heard about.
Imagine digging into this, or this.
Hey, this for your Japan trip.
So, Andre, let's jump straight in. It's quite a special year at D&AD this year because it's the first year that there's been an award specifically for creators. And it's amazing how the creative industry are now really starting to embrace creators, especially as we see such a huge shift into social and what creativity looks like in social and on social. So you want to become the world's #1 travel ally, as we can see, the ultimate travel hack. What's been your strategy with creators? Can you share some more details about some of your collaborations and how that's worked?
Yeah, definitely. And you saw there travel geeks. It's what we do inherently by nature is to try. How many people use Skyscanner? Show of hands. So lots of people know it. Great, fantastic. For those of you that didn't raise your hands, check it out. You should use it. What we want to do is we want to be a helpful, active, behavior-based brand in every single thing that we do. And working with creators who are on the ground, they get the local nuances, they get the local insights. They can really help us scale the brand and help us become the #1 travel ally for travelers. Trying to do that through the lens of just ATL and Marcoms doesn't cut it. When you start to work with creators who understand the brand promise that we make, understand the strategy, you can release them out into the world and they can create really compelling, helpful, utility-based content, as you just saw in that video.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we as Whalar, always come at things from a creator-led world, which is, our space. But you obviously work with a number of different agencies. You yourself have got a huge background at creative agencies. How's that working? How much are you working with creator agencies versus creative agencies? Are the two converging? Like, what does your agency mix look like at the moment? Given the mission that you're on to sort of build this travel community.
The convergence is real from what we see. We are in an enviable position, I think. You probably would think it's not. But we don't have massive budgets. So for me as a creative background, it's really key that we lean into just that, the unexpected, the interesting, edgy, creative, interesting work. So we have to work with agencies that bring that to the table and then think in terms of creating virality, catching lightning in a bottle, giving us more room to utilize smaller budgets in more and more interesting ways. So we work with agencies like Courage in Toronto. They do work for us that kind of pushes the boundary on utilizing what you would call classic, like out-of-home TV spaces. So we did a project with them for the NBA out-of-home whereby we bought one singular billboard and got 1 billion impressions in 72 hours. Working with Whalar to try and figure out who are the different creators who are out there in the space who can really align with our brand and get us those impressions, that reach that you would normally have to buy. Like Expedia and Booking.com spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. We don't have that. So what we have to do is utilize those budgets, utilize those creators. And then what we're seeing right now is the disintermediation of big holding companies and agencies. You're getting a lot of boutique shops and singular creatives who really get our brand and can do things in really unexpected and interesting ways. So that convergence of creators who used to just be influencers and creatives who are more classic, they're kind of smashing together right now in really interesting ways, which is great for us.
Are there things that you think that creators can do that perhaps your other agencies can't do? I mean, I know we've talked a bit about that sort of local piece, the travel geeks. You know, are there other things that you think, right, that is perfect for a creator strategy versus how you might traditionally approach creative?
I think the thing that really differentiates them is living, breathing, and understanding the platforms that they operate on.
Yeah.
The TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, etc., Shorts. You really need to know how to play in those spaces. There's a big difference between, and this will come as no surprise to anybody in the audience, but creating a TV spot, and I think a lot of brands have made really bad decisions up till now where you just like create a TV spot, cut it down, try and put it on TikTok. It does not work at all, and that will come as no surprise to anyone. So creators themselves, not only do they have communities that they get and they get them, they understand them. Once they understand the brand, they can really dig into culture at the speed of culture. And a lot of the old traditional models are too slow, too cumbersome. They don't understand the medium. They don't even understand really the differences. And the differences, they might be minute, but they're significant between what you put on Instagram and what you put on TikTok. It's completely different. And if you don't understand those spaces and those nuances, you'll never have a chance to play into trends, get the local nuances that right based on markets. Trying to scale that globally is almost impossible for some of the old traditional agencies.
Yeah, I think sort of decoding the platforms, if you like, is something that is obviously so inherent to creators. And I think this idea that you can't just take a piece of content on one and syndicate it to another, you need to be native. But it's interesting because I know you sort of referenced the holding companies and things like that as well. I guess that brands now, to be socially relevant, which is what brands mostly need to be, you have to be able to work in a faster, agile way, which is where the independent shops kind of can really excel. But how does that change when you think about the idea of the big idea? I mean, obviously, you have the ultimate travel hack, which is a tremendous umbrella for everything to wrap around. But what about the big idea? How do you think about that? And how can creators be part of the big idea? Do you have them in the boardroom with you yet? Has it got to that stage?
Yeah, the way that we think about the big idea is more from a platform level, so like a 10, 20-year vision. And you see this with some of the best brands that have done it previously, like Nike with Just Do It. They've hung on to that as a slogan, but also a DNA core belief of why they exist. And what we don't want to do is and I've seen this happen at a lot of different companies and agency side, you end up getting bored of the idea internally before the rest of the world's even had a chance to experience it. We don't want to fall into that trap. Once again, we can't. We don't have budgets that are big enough. So we have to stay the course with our platform. That becomes essentially our big idea, if you will. Now, there's nuances to that when we release different moments of work, and those ideas that stem off of that platform can play based on time of year, trends, local insights, etc. But we keep coming back to the brand strategy, the promise that we make to travelers, being helpful, aligning to the ultimate travel hack, being travel geeks, having an army of travel geeks that are out there in the world, but stay inside the confines of the brand and the brand strategy and the platform we've created and keep leaning into that again and again and again in different and unexpected ways. But I think you need to make sure that you've got a platform that has enough malleability inside of it in order to express yourself in new and unexpected and interesting ways.
I mean, the unexpected is an interesting word, isn't it? Because I do think sometimes when people see creator content, it's very different to this lovely high production campaign work that we're often used to seeing. I mean, our chairman is Sir John Hegarty, and sometimes when I show him some of the work, I sort of see his face like, But those that they've had 1 billion views and things like that. How do you cope with this kind of tension between the beautiful brand guidelines and what we might then see often on social? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, oof, one of
It's a bit
those ones.
messy.
It's super messy and weird and crazy, and it works though. Like you can't swim against the current, right? Like it's the reality of what it is. And anytime you put stuff, I mean, you guys all know, you put stuff on TikTok, et cetera, that's too polished for its own good or sniffs and feels like an ad, it just doesn't perform. So we try to find ways, first and foremost, to once again ensure that the tone of voice, the brand strategy, all those things, and what we do and why we do it is maintained. Then in terms of look and feel, we try to find organic ways to go about doing that, right? So and you've seen other brands like Duolingo, they do it super well. There's always, it's a character-based brand world that they've created, which really helps. But if you look, there's like greens and oranges and little things that they do inside there that feel organic to the content that they're creating. Liquid Death is another example. They do it really well, and they're quintessentially selling water, which is like the most boring, banal commodity possible, but it's done in a very, very different way. So tonally, it always feels very them. We try to lean into those things while we let creators themselves play in that space without confining them to like brand guidelines. And then you also think about brand density too, right? You can be more crafted on Instagram, but TikTok is more the Wild West where you kind of have to like leave your hands off it a bit more and let it be a little bit more less refined. But as a designer, it drives me a little crazy, I have to say.
I know, I'm sure there's lots of people in this room that see this content and gulp at times. But when we think about the role of traditional creative directors, I guess creative excellence has changed, especially in relation to social. You know, whether that's the brand's own tone and personality and how that needs to come across through to the creative that's being made. How have, you know, what does the new creative director look like? Is it, you know, traditionally in a creative agency, that might mean one thing. In a creator agency, it might mean another. What do you think about, what are the skill set of the new creative director, do you believe, in this kind of very modern world that we're in, from a sort of, especially with social in mind?
Yeah, the landscape just changes so fast. I think you have to, first and foremost, be a strategist more than you have had to previously, I think. And that's on the creator influencer side as much as it is on the creator side. And what I mean by that is understand the difference between a behavioral observation and an actual human insight, understand the strategy of the brand that you're working on, then be able to take that and make it yours. If you guys know Rick Rubin, he speaks a lot about just like feeling things that work for you and make things that work for you that excite you. If you understand the audience that you're speaking to and you can create things that are genuinely exciting you as a person, I think you're probably onto the right thing, but that has to be couched back in the strategy of the brand and the audience that you're speaking to, of course. But I've seen like a real, once again, convergence too, because like I think influencers previously before, they slapped their name on something, but you can't, I don't think you can do that as much anymore. I think you need to, you know, add value, create content, be compelling, be entertaining. We talk about edutainment, but the two worlds are definitely converging.
Do you work with many creators as creative directors? Because, I mean, we're seeing so many creators building up, you know, they've gone from starting in their bedrooms to now having full-blown production houses, 10, 20 people, and they're really running their own entertainment properties at this point. Have you worked with creators in that capacity before, or even with creator-led products? Because I know, you know, we're seeing creators launch their own products, from Emma Chamberlain coffee to Prime, etc. Are you doing anything that you feel that's definitely more in that kind of, you're taking it that step further yet with creators?
Not on the product development side of things.
Yeah.
I think what we've gotten better at and will continue to try to get better at is listening to creators who are out in the world with their ear to the ground, speaking to fellow travelers, speaking to communities about the things that those travelers are looking for. And sometimes we take that information back and forth, and that might lead to another way to go about creating a campaign. It might be a widget that we then put in the editorial page. It might be feedback that we provide to the product folks who we have a really good relationship with. So there's definitely a circularity there that we try to lean into.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting one, working with creators in that more strategic way. I mean, do you fundamentally believe that they can be long-term stewards of the brand? Or, because I do think there's often a perceived thing that they're influencers for hire, and that's really evolving. That's really where we're moving to. Is that how you're thinking of things now in relation to the creator space?
Yeah, that's where we've had our most success, is working with creators long term. The ones that we, like Hangry by Nature, you saw her there where she was speaking about Japan. She's so good at what she does. She's grown up with us from, I would call it smaller, medium-sized influencer to somebody who's quite big now. But as we've grown, you get to know how to work with them and what they're good at. They get to really know you and what you're trying to do. The long-term relationships are by far the best ones versus hire them once and walk away, you don't get the benefit of the back and forth of trying to figure it out collectively together, because you don't want to mess with their world. Like we talked about this before, you kind of like have to buy the ticket and take the ride and be with them and just let them do their thing within the confines of the brand. But if you don't have the time to work together, you never really get to a spot that feels truly special, I don't think.
And I think actually that's specifically very important when you think about the worlds of communities and the communities that these creators often govern. It's that very nice value exchange, and starting coming in there nice and early it just gives you such a different relationship, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think, when we just coming back to this idea, are creators the new creative directors, do you think that creators themselves are more culturally attuned to what you're seeing in the traditional agency landscape?
I think it depends on the traditional agency that you're speaking about. I think some are old and dusty and, are dinosaurs that are going away. And then you've got other ones like Uncommon. Like most of you, if not all of you, will know Uncommon, like Nils Leonard and them. They've got their finger on the pulse of culture, and they know how to disrupt. They know how to create really interesting, edgy, unexpected work. I think it just depends on who you're speaking to. I think there's a lot of agencies like Courage that we spoke about before that certainly have their fingers on the pulse of culture, and they know how to really lean into that.
Yeah.
But I think creators inherently live in the middle of it, right? And that's where the difference may be.
I see such a nice opportunity for more creative, the bigger creative shops and the creator space to actually converge and work more closely together. What should brands and agencies kind of unlearn about creative leadership? Like, in this new world order that we're in, you think about creators and how they're shaping content and culture and commerce. When you're thinking as a brand about, you've talked already about having to work with lots of different partners and moving at the speed of culture, how do you manage that?
I think what we, at least as a brand, and different brands will operate in different ways, of course, things that take so long to get across the line, where you're like spending too much time regurgitating the strategy and the bills are too high and it takes way too long to execute things. I think the thing that we have to figure out how to do is move at the speed of culture, and this isn't something new that we've talked about. We've talked about this for a long time, but I think with the tools and the access to things, like, I don't know how many people played with Flow, or saw, at least. I haven't played with it yet, but it just came out, Google's I.O. announcement. The tools that are out there right now that people can use, I mean, they're just getting better and better and better, faster and faster and faster, and I think the thing that's going to be more important than it ever has been previously is the ability to execute quickly through the lens of the brand and at the speed of culture.
Which is, again, coming back to the platform that you built, the ultimate travel hack, that sort of almost like the freedom of a tightly written brief, if you like. There's lots of creative people here. Is there, a piece of advice, Andre, that you'd give to anybody that's thinking about their creative career or thinking about their brand? Is there a piece of advice in terms of what they could be learning or leaning into?
I would say, first and foremost, it's a really obviously interesting time right now, and I think it can feel threatening and scary. But I think with all these major changes, and arguably AI is one of the biggest ones that we'll ever see, the web, even as far back as like the printing press and the camera, it freaked a lot of people out. I think don't get freaked out by the tools, really lean into them. This is something we talk about with our internal creative team, is we're always trying to play with the newest, latest, greatest tools. I think they're super powerful tools, but they're just that. They're tools. They're going to need humanity. They're going to need creativity. They're going to need to be able to understand the local nuances of what real people actually need and be able to be great storytellers. So I think lean into the tools, get strategically on point, like be a strategist to some degree. You don't have to be the strategist, but understand strategy and understand how to understand what a brand and or a business needs. Because at the end of the day, you're not just entertaining, you're trying to sell a product. So what does that brand strategy look like? Understand that. Keep your finger on the pulse of culture, which you're probably doing already. You're spending time on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, Reddit, whatever. And then I would say the last one is just lean into the things that get you excited. It's hard to make things for audiences and try to guess. I tell my team regularly, make things that, you know, excite you. Because I think if you're feeling that energy in the room, you're aligned to the brand, you're probably going to come out with something that's quite special.
That's amazing. We are on time, so thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. And yeah, thank you so much, Andre.